Hello.
Hi, Rick Shaddock.
Yes, this is Rick. How's it going?
This is Craig Ranke. How are you doing?
Great.
Good. Good to finally talk to you. You and I have never spoken before.
Oh, I think we did. Yeah, briefly by cell phone.
Really? I don't recall that. When was that?
Oh, I think when we were setting up the story video.
No, definitely not. I've never spoken with you on the phone before.
It's because I've listened to so many of your videotapes.
Yeah,
I've talked to you.
Yeah. But no, this is the first time we've spoken on the phone. So, good to finally hear your voice. We have. I'm sorry.
No. Should we record it?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to suggest that only because we're going to discuss the evidence, and this would make it easier as opposed to you having to take notes about some of the things that we're going to talk about. I'm recording, so if you want to,
it could be a good recording for other people interested in 9/11 truth.
Well, hopefully not, because we're basically hashing out a theory. You want to only put a finished theory up, but it's good to have for reference for us both, and to have it documented, basically what we said. So absolutely, why don't you go ahead and record? I'm recording, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, that's fine. My recorder's not so good.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you the copy, so
okay,
you can use that. But I figured it was time that we finally talk on the phone together, since it's clear that now we're having a disagreement. And
yeah, I don't want to be in disagreement with you, but I'm just pointing out alternatives that seem to make sense to at least be investigated. And I'm very impressed by the citizen investigation team's video, the national security alert showing that the North of Citgo flyover is very well validated by credible witnesses. And William Legacy even said he's 100% sure, and he would bet his life on it. So we gotta give him some credit.
Well, yeah, but it's not just him either. Obviously, there are many other witnesses that fully corroborate his account of the North of Citgo path. Plus, Roosevelt Roberts saw the plane flying away, as well as other people. So that's important, very important.
Right, and also I'm favorably impressed with the research that you've done with Lloyd England and his story about the taxi cab, which just on face value seems to be a ridiculous notion that a light pole can stick out of a cab without scratching the hood.
Well, yeah. Plus, since the plane was on the north side, we know it couldn't have hit those light poles anyway. So you're
right. And the way that the bottom of the light poles are very straight, looking as if they were cut. It is apparent to me that the light poles were staged, and that CIT has discovered something very important, that the official flight path does not make sense, the light poles don't make sense, and that there's very strong indication of a North of Citgo flyover, or North of Citgo path. The only thing I question is the flyover. What happened after the Citgo, between the Citgo station and the Pentagon? And because of some of the testimony, including the people at the Citgo station, it seemed to be heading towards the Pentagon at not exactly 90-degree angle, but approximately, facing that west wall. And you're right that a flyover should be investigated.
Well, actually, we don't necessarily say that a flyover should be investigated. What we say is that it's the only plausible and possible conclusion given the north side approach. So it's not really our theory. We've never called it a theory, nor have we...
Not a fact.
I'm sorry?
I know you call it a fact.
Well, no, what we're saying, I mean, yeah, we think it's the only possible conclusion, and therefore a fact once you accept the north side approach. True. But my point being is that we've never claimed...
I supported that, and I made some videos on my own. I was driving by the Pentagon to say, yeah, well, if there was a flyover, and Jim Hoffman brings up a point that people would have seen it, so I got in my car, went around and took videos, and I was predisposed to see a lot of obstacles. But then I just started to think that, God, there are a lot of places where people could see a flyover.
Which we have never denied, and that's what I tried to explain to you when you were...
Analysis of the view towards the Pentagon from the road.
Right.
And, putting red dots if it was a bad view and green dot if it was a good view. And there were definitely more bad spots, meaning that a tree or a sign or something would have obscured the view to the roof area of the Pentagon. But there still were green spots, and at least 10%, maybe about 15% were green.
Well, absolutely, and that's why I told you that, of course, there's no question that people did see the flyover, and that's why we present evidence for that, including Roosevelt Roberts and Eric Deal, who admitted that the first thing people reported was that a bomb went off and a plane kept on going, which means flyover, of course. So there's direct evidence.
Well, listen, I've listened to Roosevelt's testimony. It seems a bit confusing. He states that he's in some kind of building, and then about 7 seconds goes out. But 7 seconds, that means the plane traveled quite a distance.
Actually, that's not what he says. That's not what he says at all. What he said was that he was 7 steps away from the edge.
Well, 7 steps away from the edge.
Yeah, and that he saw the plane within 10 seconds tops after the explosion. Now, obviously, witnesses, when they're discussing a time, they're estimating a time, they won't know the exact amount of seconds, but the fact that he says 10 seconds tops simply means that it was not over 10 seconds. So that means it could have been. That means it could have been 7 seconds. It could have been 5 seconds. It could have been 3 seconds. We don't know for sure. But
I'll grant that. It does seem that the path that he's reporting, going over, having anything to do with the south parking lot, to me seems odd because he would be heading towards the river.
Well, that's what he says. It was heading towards the river. He says it was coming from D.C., or heading east towards D.C., coming from the impact side. That's what he said. So that matches perfectly. And yeah, at times it does get confusing. He gets confused about his cardinal directions. But really, clearly what he's describing, no matter what path it took, he's describing a plane immediately after the explosion at only at less than 100 feet altitude. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'll listen to it again.
Oh, so you don't agree with that, or you don't remember?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you because you've done so much more research on this.
Right, and we did talk with Roosevelt, and we did present the recorded interview in not only in National Security Alert, but in our other presentation, the North Side Flyover, where we have his entire unedited recorded phone call. Have you watched that presentation?
I've listened to a phone call between you and Roosevelt, but I don't recall whether it was the entire one or just snippets.
Well, National Security Alert is an edited version, and we state that openly in National Security Alert. But in our other presentation, the Northside Flyover, that's where we have the full interviews with the Arlington Cemetery guys, as well as Roosevelt Roberts. And we stated openly that the Roosevelt Roberts interview is completely presented in full. So, it's available on our website under the supplemental presentations. I would think you would have researched that. I mean, have you seen that? Did you watch that presentation at all?
Well, I did listen to the interview with Roosevelt Roberts, and he seemed to be talking about a plane going over were part of the south parking lot. And when he said that, I said, "Now wait a minute."
Well, but the south parking lot wraps around to the east side of the Pentagon.
It was the north parking lot on the side of the river, which at the time of 9/11 was all parking lot except for Route 110, which was closer to the building. And I know that because I often drive that way to work. So there is a section of the Pentagon called the Pentagon Secure Bypass, which was not completed until 2004.
Well, regardless, what I'm saying is the south parking lot wraps around to the east side of the building.
Yeah, over by the metro.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it could still be over the south parking even after it flew over. And in fact, Roosevelt actually says that he was at the east loading dock in our interview, if you listen carefully. So he may not have been at the south loading dock. Regardless, it's unsure exactly where he was and unsure exactly the flight path he reports. I'll admit to that. But what's not unsure is that he is reporting a large passenger airplane immediately after the explosion at less than 100 feet altitude. Do you agree with that?
Well, if he said that, that's great.
Yeah, that's what he said. So you are So in other words, to dismiss the flyover, you are also forced to dismiss his account. Not only his account, but also Eric Deal, who specifically says that the first thing people reported, he's a first-hand witness to what people reported immediately after the explosion, before the propaganda set in, and he said the first thing they said was that a bomb went off and a plane kept on going. You heard that, right?
Okay. I'd like to listen to his interview.
Well, that's in National Security Alert. Haven't you watched National Security Alert?
Well, let me check it again. Maybe it would be better if we resume this talk after I have a chance to review it.
Well, you've been communicating with me via email now for months on this, and in fact have basically created an entire theory based off our work. So I would think that you'd be at least remotely familiar with the information that we've presented.
Yeah, it definitely stands on the shoulders of your work, the North of Citgo approach, and the fact that the flight path deviates from the official story at all.
Yeah, and what part of the problem I've had with you, Rick, is
light poles being staged, and that means that there were some explosives pre-planted in the Pentagon.
Well, right. Now, the part of the problem of what I've had since you and I have been communicating via email is that you don't seem to be very aware of the information that we present. You haven't really studied the evidence or even looked at it. Particularly most of our presentations, most of our video presentations, as well as our FAQ page, which of course I would think that anybody, the average person, would at least look at the FAQ page. But it seems that you haven't even seen many of our FAQ pages or read them thoroughly. Is that an accurate representation?
There's definitely more that I need to read. So I'm wanting to resume this conversation after I have a chance to look into those specific areas. But there's so many areas of 9/11. Well,
no, this is a specific one regarding to your theory and regarding the information that you're presenting about us, because you're referencing.
I would grant that there's Roosevelt Roberts who witnessed a flyover.
Okay.
But it is one guy versus a lot of testimony of people who saw a plane impact the Pentagon.
Well, again,
I say that very emphatically.
Right, but of course, there's just like there's.
Now wait a minute.
Okay.
There's Roosevelt Roberts, one guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy and everything, Pentagon officer. But you've got all these other witnesses who are talking about a plane impacting the Pentagon. So all I'm doing is submitting that we should at least investigate the possibility that the plane continued from North of Citgo, going over the street pole and down into the Pentagon.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to say that you should not investigate and that you shouldn't speculate. If you want to speculate, I want to let you know up front that I respect your right to do so. Okay?
Yeah, it's stated as a theory, something to check out. It's a hypothesis.
Well, actually, throughout your webpage, you do actually state it as fact, especially towards the end in the conclusion. So you don't just state it as a theory. Now, there are many problems with it, and I'd like to go through those with you.